The transfer portal is closed, and Georgia Tech ought to feel lucky they didn't have more names in it.
You are Locked On Georgia Tech, your daily podcast on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Georgia Tech. I am one of your hosts, Caleb Johnson. I wasn't smart enough to get into Georgia Tech, but I'm plenty smart enough to talk Georgia Tech sports. Taking this daily journey with me, covering the Yellow Jackets, is my co-host, Jarvis Davis, who's been covering Atlanta sports for the last 15 years. We want to start off by saying thank you for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the #1 sports podcast network. We're free and available wherever you download your podcast, and wherever you go to download them, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Today on the show, we will get into who is the odd man out. How did Brent Key handle the hiring process? But first, Jarvis, I feel like we've spent so much time this week diving into guys who joined the program, and honestly, we did it the week before it as well. Guys who have joined this program, who are exciting pieces of the future that have been added through the transfer portal to expand the roster, improve things, give fans more hope for the future, all of that sort of thing. But it felt like this might be a good time to kind of revisit and look back at some players who didn't enter the transfer portal, didn't take a look elsewhere, when you really start to wonder. I mean, given all of the names, especially after Buster Faulkner decided to leave and took, a lot of players with him, kind of surprising that there weren't more names. So if I were to ask you, Jarvis, who do you feel like Georgia Tech should be lucky they were able to keep out of the transfer portal?
Oh, one name that immediately comes to mind, Malachi Hosley. I feel like he's the guy that first of all, he was your lead running back last year. He was the most explosive back that you had last year. He was the guy that you can count on to make a play for you when you gave him the rock. Now, granted, once the season went along and there was some, maybe injury, necessarily not really to give him more touches because of what Jamal Haynes had done, for this team and for Georgia Tech. To be honest with you, Caleb, if he would have hopped in the portal, I wouldn't even be mad at him.
Not at all.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, hey, man, like, I'm clearly the better back. Regardless of what he's done, we're in 2025 and we're trying to get to where we need to be, which was Charlotte. And you up here playing around talking about seniority? Nah, man, I don't want to hear that. And people don't, and guys don't have to listen to that nowadays. So that's why when I found out that Malachi Hosley name, any rumblings about him leaving, I was like, man, y'all got a good one now. Y'all got a real good one. And then when they brought Justice Haynes in, I was like, is there still a chance potentially? Probably so. I was like, but when he didn't, no rumblings, no nothing, no reports or nothing come out of down there in downtown Atlanta, I was like, hey, man, yeah, you better thank your lucky stars you got that type of guy, because Hosley is one of those dudes on the field and seemingly off the field as well.
Yeah, a big thing was like Justice Haynes coming in. He's averaging like 19 touches a game. Like, that man is a back that Michigan, Alabama, previous to that, wanted to feed and get him a lot of opportunities. And so that was when I started to wonder of, okay, are the opportunities for Malachi Hosley going to be significantly reduced because Haynes is in here? Another Haynes for him. Right. And for whatever that Brent Key and this staff was able to do was good enough to convince Hosley not to make a move, not to enter the transfer portal. And I would say another guy, Jarvis, that because so many people were hitting the portal out of that receiver group, out of the tight end group, like so much movement of either guys graduating and going on to their next steps or hitting the transfer portal. I looked at Jordan Allen being a name of like, at least you have some consistency across the board when it comes to that wide receiver group. Because yes, is it going to be a different guy calling plays? Sure. Is it going to be a different guy throwing the football? Yes. However, there is a level of consistency that you want to have in your program from year to year. And so when I looked at the freshman season that Jordan Allen had and the speed, just the natural speed and God-given ability that he has, you don't think that other programs aren't looking at that going, oh, yeah, we can, a deep ball threat, a guy who can, take it, 84 yards or whatever his long catch of the season was. So knowing that he had that skill set made me think of, I'm right there with you. Malachi Hosley was my number one on this list of people that Georgia Tech fans should be absolutely thankful for sticking around. That, 1B was Jordan Allen, just because I thought, man, if he walks out of the door, just the entire receiving core across tight ends and wide receivers would be completely brand new. And having to rebuild all of that without having some form of consistency would just be really tough.
Absolutely, man. And like it got to a point once Faulkner left and everybody was going down to Florida to go ride the bench and all that stuff. It just really sorry.
Nah, you're just speaking the truth.
Yeah. I mean, because hey man, look, I just saying, y'all gonna be smoking cigarettes on the sidelines, y'all gonna understand. They're gonna find out. They're gonna find out really quickly from what the SEC and that depth and why guys hop in the portal every doggone year. They're gonna find out really quickly. But when Jordan Allen was the only guy that had caught a pass still on his roster, just like, hey, it goes back to what I said about Hosley. Yeah, they have a right to leave. You didn't know who the OC was. It was, we end up finding out that it was George Godsey. And, when you bring in a guy like a Godsey, and, there was some rumors, nothing being confirmed, that Faulkner and Key probably didn't see eye to eye on philosophies and all that type of stuff. And, he wanted to bring a guy in that kind of aligned with that. So Jordan Allen was like, man, I don't know him. So, hey, I'm going to hop in this portal. But, like, again, Tech better thank their lucky stars. And I think not only thank their lucky stars, whatever you believe in, all that stuff, but I think Key has a part in that too for those guys sticking around. Because he's so upfront, because he has these conversations with these guys and he's being quote unquote real with them. And I think that, that's a part of it too. And a lot of times, people are like, oh yeah, he's supposed to tell the truth. Man, I'm gonna tell you something. There are a lot of snake oil salesmen out there, Lane Kiffin is the lead dog.
How did I know? How did I know that was going to be the first name out of your mouth?
I'm just saying, it's the truth, though, man. We know Lane is a snake. He's a snake. That man got fired on a tarmac, bro. Like, can't nobody top that. He'll never be able to top that. I don't care him getting an LSU job. He might win a national championship next year. People still gonna be talking about, man, they fired that man before he got on the plane. or when he got off the plane, I can't even remember. It's been so long ago, but I remember he got fired on the tarmac. So I think when you have a guy who's a stand-up guy, character guy, it's easy to recruit guys like that. You know what I mean? Because people recognize it. They can see it. It's just because it's in them. Malachi can see in Key because he knows how it feels. He knows those actions. He knows those conversations, the words that comes out of Key's mouth. He typically believes him. So, they better thank their lucky stars. But also, you got to look at the coach too. How the coach is operating with these guys, how he's having these conversations, that matters to these young guys, man.
Yeah, I will. I'll throw one more name out there that I just was. I'm honestly surprised didn't hit the portal. I know Georgia Tech fans aren't exactly thrilled with him because of some legal trouble he found himself in last season when he decided to make the decision to go up 316 and hang out with those guys up in Athens. However, only the second 5-star ever to choose Georgia Tech. Josh Petty losing his offensive lineman coach, Jeep Wade, who goes up to Nebraska. Like, there were plenty of reasons for Josh Petty to hit the portal. And I think in the same respect, there's reasons for Tech fans to feel like maybe he's not as big of a deal as he seemed when he first stepped on campus. Like, no, don't get it messed up that like this guy was a top recruit at tackle and guard Jarvis for a reason.
Yes.
And still is a top talent who will be in his second season. And so has that ability to develop, grow into his body, quite honestly, gets another year older, certainly plays a factor in that. And I just know that there were plenty of schools, even with the legal trouble, who would have been very, very interested in having Josh Petty join their program. And so the fact that Georgia Tech is able to keep him around and very likely have him slide in to a starting role feels like, I mean, this is a huge lucky break, quite honestly, for Tech. But to your point, also coaching, relationships, all of those aspects certainly play a role. It's not just pure luck. We're not throwing it out there. It's just now that we've reached this point, it feels like, yeah, you've got to realize how much worse it could have been.
Absolutely. And for Key to be able to navigate it like he did, you got to give him props, man. You got to give him props, because most guys who aren't built like that, they would have folded.
Yeah.
They would have panicked. They would panic hire. Like, everybody was like, man, who gonna OC gonna be? We were right there. Like, man, who gonna call plays next year? Is it gonna be Chris? Is Chris gonna call plays? It was just like a lot of outside pressure or conversations going on. But Key was just like, I got about 36 guys I got to go through, and we're gonna come to a conclusion. And that's exactly what it did.
Let's take a look now at that hiring practice for Brent Key. How did Key handle the practice, the hiring process overall? Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get your updates right in the TurboTax app. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. We want to thank you guys for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Georgia Tech with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedongeorgiatech.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. Jarvis, as we really reevaluate the guys who could have hit the portal but didn't, it feels like also a good time to reevaluate now that we are seeing Brent Key's staff kind of come to completion and you know all of the individual position coaches and, of course, the coordinators, the guys that gets everyone's attention. how do you feel like Brent Key did filling out this coaching staff?
I thought it was timely because when you think about just looking at the running back hire, Jimmy Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Smith gets hired. I see the box Chevy, on Twitter. He riding out in the box Chevy. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the running back coach for Georgia Tech. By the way, if y'all see that, it's absolutely great. It's amazing. If you're from Atlanta, you understand.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, Justice Haynes, the best running back in the portal, damn near. He just magically comes down. It comes out of nowhere. It was just very timely. And I think that when you look at how strategic he was with his hires, not only was it timely, he was strategic with it too, because he bought Jafar Williams just in time for him to get a chance to interact with Zay Furman. Zay Furman was very explicit. He was just like, I immediately connected with Coach Williams, that is, because he was on campus when Zay was there. So when you think about that means a plan. Like, that means he had a plan. Like, it wasn't just flying by night, just trying to figure things out. No, he was very strategic with it. It was timely. The guys that he had on campus that he was targeting, he had those hires on campus conversing with those guys and interacting with those guys like, hey, I'm going to be your wide receiver coach. I know exactly how I'm going to get you better, and here's how I'm going to do it. That's what guys want to hear, man. How can you help me? And I think that once you establish that as a position coach, I think Key, that lets you know that Key hired the right guys.
Yeah, I look at early on in the process, I was very nervous, especially the amount of time that it took to find an offensive coordinator worried me a ton, because you just didn't know what ramifications that we're going to have, what things were going to get messed up on down the line, what opportunities you would miss out on because you didn't have a guy in that role, and people, talented players who were looking at this program, maybe not choosing it because of uncertainty. And yet once an offensive coordinator was found with George Godsey, that got the ball rolling, and you saw other guys stepping in and filling their roles. And then I look at a guy who not many coaches, to be completely honest, stuck around. But one that I think is pretty interesting because he's young and had the ability to move on and take a better job is Nathan Brock, the tight ends coach. Yes, you do lose your top talent and Luke Harpring going down to Florida to very likely ride the pine, as you mentioned earlier.
Yep.
Yeah. However, like, Nathan Brock is, like I said, he's a young coach, was as recent as this past year recognized by the American Football Coaches Association as 35, one of the 35 under 35 years old. And so I think to be on a staff where everyone's getting poached and to be able to find some consistency for Brent Key, I think was important. I still think there are question marks about George Godsey, but the part that really made me feel good about the future of this program is when you do lose your defensive coordinator, who everybody was kind of on the fence about already, and he decides to go back to Texas. You filling that with Jason Semore, I feel like out of all the options that were available, that felt like the most home run hire, the one that you see the thought process, that you see how this staff can kind of unfold. And you mentioned Jimmy Smith earlier. I think of whether it's Jason Semore or whether it's on the, contending on the defensive side of the ball with Vinny Sinceri, like, experience is kind of across the board. And right, wrong, or indifferent, you get that with George Godsey too. Like, whether I might criticize his experience as have we moved on past, like, experience was definitely an important factor to Brent Key, and I think he found it in a lot of different areas.
Absolutely, man. And I'm with you on the whole Jason Semore piece because, when you don't have just 4 or 5 stars at every doggone level on the defensive side of football, you got to have an advantage some way. And the one thing that has been consistent throughout Jason Semore's career is the fact that this man coaches turnovers and guys get them, whether it's a mindset that he preaches to his corners, like, man, pass breakup don't mean nothing. Hey, man, they still got the ball and they about to get ready to line up and run another play. But you know how they don't do that? Pick it off. If we're getting our hands on it, pick it off so we can give our offense another possession. So, when you think about teams in all phases being all together as one and trying to win football games, when you have a new quarterback starter, regardless of who the starter is, there's going to be an adjustment period. And guess who's going to have to hold it down until that adjustment is made? The defense. And so how can you do that? Give them extra possessions. Give them the ball on their side of the 50, right? You know what I mean? Like giving them short fields to work with. All of those things are going to matter, especially when the season starts. That's going to be a big factor as to how they do to start the season off, is whether or not defense is going to be able to get offense some short fields to work with and some extra possessions.
It's also just interesting because this is truly the first time for Brent Key that he's had this much change, both sides of the ball, having to hire coordinators, having to hire all these different position coaches, and then everything now will go back to him. There's no more carryover from a previous regime that he was kind of a part of. There is so much new with this program as they head into 2026 that it's going to be interesting to see how it all kind of shakes out. I think as to whether the criticism is warranted or whether Brent Key is able to show once again, hey, for all the people that doubted me as the head coach in the first place, I know what I'm doing. I know how to hire a staff. I know how to find people that might not exactly be the no-brainer, this is the guy to bring in. He's kind of pulling from a lot of different areas, and I'm going to be very interested to see how it all ends up. All right, let's finish up the show going from coaching staff to one position that, of course, everyone loves to talk about, and specifically out of the quarterbacks, who's the odd man out? All right, Jarvis, we spent so much time talking about the newest piece to the Georgia Tech football quarterback room, Alberto Mendoza, all the excitement that comes with him. If you are a fan of Georgia Tech and you haven't been on social media recently, just look at any of the latest transfer portal signings and see how those guys are very excited that Alberto Mendoza is in the quarterback room. We talked about Jarvis, whether or not he would be the day one starter. If you haven't caught that episode, definitely go back and check it out. It's just from the day previous, part of that conversation. But now I thought it was interesting to talk about there, instead of 3 guys in the room, there's now 4. So Jarvis, when it comes to that depth chart sheet that we're going to get week 1 of the season, usually lists 3 names. Somebody's going to get left off. Who do you feel like is the odd man out for this quarterback room right now?
I mean, I'm going back and forth between Cole Bergeron and Grady Adamson. So,
and I think that's where the debate has to be.
Right, exactly. Exactly. So it's good that Cole Bergeron is going to be on campus. He's an early enrollee. He's a mid-year guy. So he's going to be at spring practice. He's going to be able to suck it all in. And I think that, and we kind of touched on it a little bit yesterday's episode, but I think that when you have a new OC come in, I feel like a guy like Cole Bergeron has an advantage because Adamson don't know what the style is right now. He don't know, like he doesn't have a good grasp of what they've been running already. I know a lot of people talk about Chris Weinke and all that stuff. I get that. Chris knows who he is, but it's all about George Godsey calling the plays.
Yeah.
So Godsey wants to come in and do what he wants to do. So I really feel like when you have a guy who's already been here and you've had an OC change, that kind of takes his advantage away. Addison, that is. So going through it, thinking about it even more, I really feel like Cole Bergeron might make Adamson be the odd man out. So yeah, that's kind of where I lean. Yeah.
I'm laughing, Jarvis, because I thought that your take was going to be Cole Bergeron being the odd man out because newest, what are the in like your a job where they got to make cuts, the latest hire is the latest to fire.
Last in, first out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you a lot of the times run into that type of situation where, okay, you're the newest man on campus. So unfortunately but I think that philosophy is an older thought now and one that doesn't consider NIL and the transfer portal. And that is to say, it all depends on how much Brent Key and Georgia Tech actually wanted Cole Bergeron. Because if you remember, there was kind of a time where, are they going to sign someone? Are they not? Bergeron had an opportunity with Virginia Tech, and then, new coach comes in, and all of a sudden, hey, maybe he wants somebody else out. Well, I've still got this offer from Georgia Tech. However much it is viewed that Georgia Tech wanted Cole Bergeron, we're about to find out, because I think in this day of NIL and the transfer portal, he is the new shiny piece. And if you want him to be around your program, you've got to show him that we want you to stick around, and you got to, throw him a little bone every now and then. That would, I think, come in the form of being a little higher up on the depth chart and knowing that the possibility of you being that guy is realistic. I also just think it from this aspect, and maybe this is just too basic a concept, but middle childs sometimes get forgotten. And I really feel like in this type of situation, because you had Graham Knowles, big arm, he comes in on campus, he gets that time in the spring. He's also, like the 6'7" aspect of it all, just kind of gets people's attention. You have the new guy on the block and Alberto Mendoza who shows up, and everyone's excited about the last name. So you have all of that. So you have, all of those kind of the older guys in the room that get your attention. And then you've got the baby of the group in Cole Bergeron, the freshman on the scene. And so what can happen in a family that has a lot of kids? What can happen in a quarterback room? That middle guy, Grady Adamson in this situation, ends up getting lost. So could he absolutely prove us wrong, Jarvis, and go out through spring practice, tear it up and rise? Absolutely he could. It just feels like at this moment, this early in January, that maybe he gets lost amongst the shuffle because he's not the shiny new piece, and he's not he wasn't on campus earlier and he's not the big transfer coming in. Like someone's got to lose here, unfortunately, and you just kind of wonder if it ends up being Adamson.
Yeah, man, because one thing about spring practice is a lot of install, a lot of going through things, and a lot of being able to get familiar with your guys, and a lot of guys meeting each other for the first time for the most part, and or at least interacting with them and being out on the field. Now they're working out right now. So you get to know them, but like you really get to know them once to put the pads on. That's a whole different getting to know, So I really feel like in this particular case, there's going to come a time during this install that guys going to get work with the ones. And, you only can have one quarterback out there at one time. That's it. I know it's an open competition, and I really believe that it's going to be an open competition, but you're going to have a strong 2 by the end of spring. So, and then the third guy going, kind of be a hang around and watch and learn. And that fourth guy is probably going to be trying to figure out what school he can go to next year, or he might just say, hey, man, I ain't got time for this. Now, the portal in the spring doesn't exist anymore. So I don't know what you're going to do. You stick around, but yeah, man, at some point, those reps, those competition reps are going to get minimized, and they're going to start dwindling down to a strong 2, maybe 3 as they get prepared for summer camp.
Yeah, Jarvis, on depth charts that we get at games, you go to cover a game and you see everything laid out. I feel like what you're talking about is a situation where multiple names are in bold and it says or. We're likely going to end up in a situation week 1 of a Alberto Mendoza or Graham Knowles or maybe we just get 2 names in bold, and then you get the others. And so, I'm very. Say what?
You think that's gonna go that far?
It depends. Like, I think it depends on if that matters to those guys. If it matters to Brent Key, who is obviously going to be the one with the final say on putting that sort of stuff together. I would assume no. I would think it stops at 3 quarterbacks, and then you just kind of figure it out by process of elimination after that aspect. But it's also one too that they're not often updating this throughout the season. So even if it were to change throughout the year, it's not like we would necessarily find out unless Key or Weinke or Godsey, speaks up about it all. But it's definitely, man, I mean, those reps in the spring game are going to be very interesting of who comes out there first, who comes out there second, do you get 3rd and 4th reps, and how does it all shake out?
Yeah, man. I think that's why I say, I got to do a little research to kind of figure out, how things went last year's spring practice, because we knew who the starter was last year.
Yeah.
Versus this year. Like, let's see if there's going to be a little difference. I got a sneaky feeling that it might be a little different than it was last year, because everybody know HK, was the dude. So this year, not so much. And I think the competition is going to be real, and hopefully they let us get a good view of it, because I like to have my opinion. You could tell me whatever, but I like to see it with my own eyes.
Jarvis says we need to watch more than just the guys stretching at the beginning of practice. Essentially.
Absolutely.
So
come on, Flynn, let's go.
All right. That'll do it for this episode of Locked On Georgia Tech. Make sure you follow the show, subscribe on YouTube and anywhere you listen to podcasts for free. Follow Jarvis at JarvisD90. I'm at ATL Johnson 18. Thank you for making Locked On Georgia Tech your first listen of the day. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Georgia Tech with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedongeorgiatech.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. For Locked On Georgia Tech, y'all have a good one.